I would firstly like to ask you all, perhaps in the same order, to basically tell us a little bit about your journey with each of these fabulous museums. For 5, 6, yeah, starting with you first, Kishwar, thanks.
Thank you so much, firstly, for inviting me today, Kai. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Raj, and thanks to everybody who has come this morning to listen to us and our journey. Basically, the Partition Museum, I felt, was something that needed to be done. It was 70 years since the partition when we set up the first museum, which is in Amritsar. And it was going to be, according to our agenda, going to be set up on the 70th anniversary. Some of you may know that partition actually took place in 1947, 2 days after independence. So whilst we celebrate independence on the 15th of August, partition took place on the 17th. So many people woke up on that day to realize for the first time whether they were in India or in Pakistan. So it was also a very momentous event in the history of not only the subcontinent, but of the world. Again, some of you may know that the studies now show that it was not a small number. It remains the world's largest migration. Many of us in this room, and especially those who come from Punjab, Bengal, Sindh, and other places, have been impacted in a great way by the partition, but it was never documented. So this was a dream that I had, a crazy dream about 20 years ago when I used to work in television, and everybody dissuaded me at that time and said that don't ever go there because setting up a museum is no easy task. It was not easy. Even when we began in 2015, set up a small not-for-profit trust, and we requested people to donate whatever they could in terms of their memories, mementos, and money. Of course, that was the most important thing. But we had no building, we had nothing. So it was just a dream at that point. We were fortunate that the government of Punjab helped us at that time. It was Prakash Singh Badal who was in power at that time. And he said, Bibi, tusi nahi karoge te asi kar lange. Meaning that if you don't do it, we'll set up the Partition Museum. But the fact was it hadn't been done. So he gave us a building at that time, the town hall, as you know, where it is now. But it was completely in ruins. So we had this daunting task of setting up a museum within a very grand old building, which was completely in a very, very sad shape. But we were determined to do it. So it's almost like a miracle, it's magical that within a year we actually managed to raise the money, we managed to get all the collections. We had no collections also when we started out. We didn't even have a single photograph, we didn't have a single memory, we didn't have a single memento, nothing. So it was really a dream that pushed us forward. It was a small group of people. Where we were lucky, Kai, was that a lot of young people stood by us, you know. When we did our first event in Delhi, people said nobody's going to turn up, you know, because there'll be like 3 people in the room who will be mostly in their 80s and 90s. We did this event. A few of you may have been there. This was at the IIC, and which holds, the auditorium holds about 350 people. And everyone, again, tried to dissuade us and said, don't do it here. Nobody's going to show up. It's going to be very embarrassing for you. 1,500 people showed up. There was no place to even sit. So, I mean, there were people sitting on the floor. There were friends who had to go away. And it was remarkable. And it is a people's museum because that is what pushed us forward. And the young people who stood by us, and they were the ones who went out, recorded the histories, helped us with the donations, collected the research. You talked about skilling, you know. So this was something which was our first experience in skilling young people in how to set up a museum, which we were also learning as we went along. But it needed to be done, and I'm very happy to tell you today that the museum has won 7 awards. It has been very, very regularly, it pops up as the most visited place in Amritsar, and it has got tourism awards as well. 2 years ago, the collection of tourist writers in the UK nominated this as the best place to go to in Amritsar. So I think it is something which we definitely feel that today, because of tourism, we are still there, because we get thousands of visitors on a daily basis. And these are not your normal visitors. These are not your very fancy visitors. These could be just young families, very middle class, whose parents may have talked to them about the partition. These could be students. We often even get people from the services. There's the one museum where you'll see policemen, constables walking in, trying to find out whether their parents' stories are there. Because now we have, it's 17,000 square feet, what we have in Amritsar, 14 galleries, all being maintained even till today through donations. We don't get any government funding. Similarly, the one in Amritsar, like the one in Amritsar, the one in Delhi is at the Dara Shikoh Library, which again, it's actually got partly Mughal and partly colonial features. Again, given to us in a very dilapidated condition, but the Delhi government managed to restore it and give it to us. But again, it's the same story. It's come under Adopt a Heritage. You spoke about looking after monuments, I think Raj mentioned. So this is another way. This monument was literally in the last stages of its life when it was given to us. There was mold everywhere, there was damp, there were termites, there were rats, there were snakes. When it was given to us, it had been locked up for many years. It was in a very, very bad condition. But when it was given to us, this is about 3 years ago, just before COVID. So for COVID, it got a little delayed. We had to again do the same thing. We had to raise the money, raise the funds. Today, we do have 7 galleries. It's again one of the places that people like to visit. A lot of tourists come every day. And I want to tell you that this documents the story, the narrative of what happened to Delhi post-partition. So it also tells a story of Delhi. But for the first time anywhere in the world, as you know, there is in our national anthem, Gujarat, Sindh, Gujarat, Maratha. Sindh is mentioned, but there is nothing, no place in the world that the Sindhis can go to if they ever want to commemorate their lost homeland. So for the first time ever, we are setting up a special gallery which is dedicated to the lost homeland of Sindh. And already we can see that there is a lot of excitement all over the world, and there are Sindhis who are planning to come for the inauguration. So we are trying to do whatever we can to preserve history. So I think tourism was not our agenda when we began. It was mainly heritage and history, our forgotten history of the partition that we were trying to commemorate and trying to preserve. But quite accidentally, it has also become a place where a lot of tourists, especially students, young people come to, and also older people come to remember their past. So thank you very much. In a sense, of course, it was a big, big struggle. It was a huge struggle and continues to be a struggle because we have to raise the money for this. But I do hope some of you will support us, as everybody has so far. Thank you.
Ashish, I ask you to tell us about your museum.
ओम सरस्वती नमः। सभाजन को नाचीज का प्रणाम। इस सभा में इतने गुणवान, यशवान, धनवान, बलवान, शायद 1-2 शैतान भी बैठे हों। मैं आपकी छोटी सी संतान पहले से ही माफ़ी का हकदार हूँ। छोटी सी क्योंकि मेरा जन्मदिन 4 साल में एक बार आता है। Thank you. Thank you. I've just turned sweet 16 and this is a very touching story and a platform, and thank you Raj and India Today Group, Mr. Puri and Ranjit and all of you for getting us together, because living far from the maddening crowd, we live in a small village called Bengaluru. It has become very big, And I'm a grandchild of partition, so your story resonates. Mohan Khokar, my father, whose centenary this year the nation celebrates, is actually born in Quetta, destroyed in an earthquake in 1935, and that's the beginning of the story of collection. Museums are one thing about objects and maybe a saved memory, but collections are about madness. It is about how you take one field or one subject and make that your life. So imagine a Sikh Punjab boy whose family has nothing to do with the arts in the wilderness of Quetta, which is Balochistan in pre-partition India. Whole city is destroyed and evacuated and resettled in Lahore, which is 1945. Lahore is the cultural capital of India then. Delhi is just a village, really, 400,000 population, about 40 lakhs, so not so much. And Lahore is the capital where all groups of performers come, like Uday Shankar, Ram Gopal from Bangalore, Uday Shankar from Bombay or Calcutta. So in one of the groups, he sees Mrinalini Sarabhai and my mother, M.K. Saroja, and he asks them, where can I learn these divine forms? They said, please go south. He thinks south is one city. That is the understanding of India then and sometimes now. So he takes a train all the way to south. They have told him there's a lady sitting under a banyan tree. As if there's only one lady in South India and only one banyan tree. Sure enough, he reaches Madras after 7-10 days of journey, charcoal's face because of steam engines, and he lands up, and as Providence would have it, he finds one not so old lady, Rukmini Devi Arundel, sitting under that banyan tree, teaching some form of dance. She gives him one look and he says, "Hey, paiye, ni ibdi inge vanda, how have you come so far? Yanna saapde, what will you eat here even? We eat only rice 3 times a day." So she is so good as a guru that she says to the hostel canteen, please make chapati for this Punjabi boy who's come from so far. I'm talking of 1945. He never returns home because partition happens. There's no home to return to. So when you're displaced overnight, it's the memory of the displacement of Quetta, Lahore, and a camera that saves him to document dance from 1940s onwards. And today it amounts to about 70,000 photographs taken from 1940s till he passed away in 1999. Over 5,000 rare books because Britishers were leaving India and selling off their books and many artifacts for a song. But of course, one had to have some pennies to play that song. So from his students' fees, whatever he could save. So he created this collection of dance, which has history, which has memorabilia, which has artifacts, which has, everything. Over the years, recorded masters and postage stamps. So collection becomes madness. I call it Mohan's madness. I inherited it. That's why you see a 16-year-old having white hair, almost. It is the madness one pays the price for. We look for 20, 25 years to donate it to a body. So it was New York Public Library, Lincoln Center, which offered first in 1976 because they were setting up the biggest Asian dance museum. Of course, they're the best museums there because there's private partnership. There's CSR, and the Rockefellers and others can donate money, and it's a tax write-off. So which is a very important point that if we need to have museums survive and cultural economics survive, we need also corporate tax sanitization where the corporates are encouraged to donate some sums for the larger good of society. That is one takeaway from this. The cultural economics sometimes we don't discuss, but that's also important because we don't realize it's an industry. Films, weddings, Indian panorama, we are dancing all the time. Of course, the universe dances, but we are dancing too. So if you think of all our festivals, if you think of any festival in any part of India, there's always some dance and music going on. Even if you've not tabulated the costumes or the makeup person or the flower seller or the arrangements. I'll just give you one statistic UNESCO gave me. In 1 year of COVID in Australia, when singers could not perform in bars, normal musicians, it was equivalent to 50 years of tennis playing at the national level. So the culture economy of just singers not able to be in bar, ordinarily singing and entertaining clients in Australia. Can you quantify the Indian economy in culture? We need to do that, maybe with help of synergetic, education, culture, tourism ministries, and with help of UNESCO or some such protocoled body. So the collection today is donated to IGNCA. We looked for agencies in India. There are not many specific institutions you can donate to because Crafts Museum will take crafts item. Archives will take only paper and photographs. Where does a collection in totality go with costumes, with postage stamps, with lottery tickets, with books? So it is very, very all-encompassing. encompassing. IGNCA, which is Indira Gandhi National Center for the Art, moved now from Central Vista to an old hotel called Janpat. So we are struggling and managing in old rooms, renovated. And under the leadership of Ram Bahadur Rai and Sachidanand Joshi ji, and culturally informed trustees, Sonal Mansingh, Padma Subramaniam, Prasoon Joshi, Sandhya Purecha, Bharat Gupt, Saryu Doshi, there are many collections there. Lance Dane, or we have Raja Deen Dayal photography, or we have Anand Kumar Swami and Mohan Khokar. So maybe when we are talking of this new India and synergies, and Raj explained so well, we learned so much from your 10-minute discourse, so much, so factual, as only you could and India Today could tabulate and put it together. We need to think of museums in a new manner, which is more public intensive, more open to the even local public, leave alone tourism, because they form an important component. And maybe the best of India's collection from all over should be put in the biggest rooms available, possibly the north and south blocks. I'm told there are 900 rooms, including basements. So the National Museum is, of course, shifted there and is in the process, but many of the famous collections and our treasures. So if somebody comes, it's like going to the Louvre of India. It is one-point stop in Delhi with other tourism aspects. There are so many museums, and 1 day or 2 days do not afford us the time. We were also donating much to Lady Kishwar's and the team's idea, and all the photos from Lahore, the Punjab Gharana, and the dance. Yes, there was a Punjab Gharana of Kathak. So when we make a film today on maybe airline safety, we think of Kathak belongs only to UP. Rajasthan, Jaipur is important. Punjab Gharana is all important. Khairagarh in Chhattisgarh is important. So the saved memory is educational. When you write a PhD, when you make a film script, when you do a biography, when you write for mainstream media, you need facts. Facts comes from these preserves of archive, saved memory, and what have you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashish. Just IGNC is in temporary quarters right now at the Janpat Hotel, but do you have much idea about what the new building will be like and where your collection will be housed? This will not be in the north and south blocks, right? It's a separate building.
I hope achhe din aayenge. They have been allotted plot adjacent to UPSC quota house, which is at the moment houses maybe 300 small government offices, you know, which need to be relocated. So we can only be hopeful. You see, in India, one has to be hopeful. Otherwise, one can't be smiling. And with the processes of our state, which is actually serving to the best of its possibilities. You know, we always talk of other examples. Sweden, I worked with, Germany or France, or many of these countries, Malaysia even, or Vietnam. I think everyone also pays taxes. If you do statistics, Raj would be very good at it. I realized that only 2.36, mind you, it is not even double digit. 2.36, maybe it has gone up by 0.3%. Under 3% people in India pay taxes. Of course, there are other taxes. You know, there's all that. So where does the funding for the government projects? And culture, of course, always becomes, short-shifted because their priorities in education, health, ecology, all other concerns. But here, society has to put premium on culture and the arts. If you buy a ticket, we always buy a $10 or $50 ticket when you go to America for a museum. Why don't we pay 500 rupees here for a concert?
Can I just interrupt here? You know what the ticket price for our museum is in Amritsar? 10 rupees. The government insisted that it has to be 10 rupees. So from that 10 rupees, we are still fortunate that we can still pay for some of the amenities. Our air conditioning cost itself for that building goes up to about 3 lakhs a month. So from that 10 rupees, we have to somehow find that. So I agree with you that we should actually rationalize some of these decisions which are made in the wisdom of the government. And one thing I just want to say, that just like we have adopted 2 monuments which were actually falling apart and we use them for museums, but we also have functions there. And the entire O&M is upon us, operations and maintenance. So even if a tile falls down or a window falls down, something, we have to do it. However, part is that this allows the building a fresh lease of life. And it comes under, the one in Delhi comes under heritage. So I would really say that if you can ask IGNCA to adopt an existing monument rather than and then use it as a museum, it'll serve both purposes.
Possibly with ASI and other organizations willing, because we have plethora of agencies, and that I think is inheritance from British Raj. I'll conclude with a very concrete example. There's a British law of 1922. We are in 2024. 1922, that you cannot sing and dance in temple courtyards. Now we are looking for audiences in Metro India, and with great difficulty, Aiye, Padhariye, we get 500 people on a good day. But our temples are the natural setting where every evening somebody will go to a temple in Mylapore or in Punjab, in Gurdwara, or wherever in Bengal or in Gujarat. That should be a natural place in the Angan, in the courtyard. We are not affecting the structure, we are not affecting that. There's a ready-made audience for our performing arts, which are connected to spirituality and divinity anyway. So maybe some of this needs to be sanitized too, because on one side we're looking for audiences for classical forms especially, and on the other side we are struggling for patronage, and patronage has to come from corporate India. Please wake up, please support the arts, adopt. And that, I think, somebody at the level of India today, which has clout and power and is read and understood, has to appeal to the government that sanitize some of these tax laws. So the corporate India, which is well meant, they're willing to do, but they should be able to support more freely. Thank you.
Thank you. Aditya, do tell us about your story and the importance of patronage, government or private, with that. Is that?
Thank you, Raj. Thank you, Kai. And well said, we need support. So my journey has been very interesting. I was an advertising photographer, 40 years, traveled very extensively, but in college I had studied history. And as a photographer, I realized photography had a very deep history, and I started collecting all kind of equipment, ephemera, and ended up collecting more than 8,000 cameras going back to 1860. And sometime in 2016 or 17, one gentleman called me up. He says, the commissioner of Gurgaon, I keep reading about you on social media. I like to come and see your collection. And I said, yes, let's have a cup of tea on the weekend. And he came, he said, what do you intend to do with this? All that stuff was cramped in my basement. And he said, let's talk. We'll give you any place in Gurgaon if you're willing to make a museum. Next day, we were talking museum. Within 6 months, we located a place. And that's when the roadblock came. He said, there has to be an IAS officer here. It's a great idea, but we are going to give you this land, which is 40, 50 crores, 100 crores. But so I said, sir, that is not where we can't move ahead with this. I have lots of friends, very close friends, but he said, no, we'll always support this. I said, no. A place like museum should have independence. Cultural places should not be controlled. And we discussed for 6 months, and he came back to me and he said, I think that's the route to take. And hats off to him. Within 6 months, we had the seed money from the government of Haryana, and I crowdfunded the entire museum on social media. And yeah, the process goes on. It doesn't stop. I realized running a museum is not a small thing. Museum is in the heart of Gurgaon, is spread over 0.75 acre of land, it's 18,000 square feet of building. And today, it has become a cultural hub of Gurugram. We get hundreds of school children and thousands of visitors every week. We have created programs which are based on for school children, for corporates. So for me, museum is a place of engagement. It's not a place which showcases just the past, but a place which celebrates the present. The place which engages with the community. Gurugram has a huge, upwardly mobile community with deep pockets. Some do donate, because 6 months after the opening came the COVID, and we didn't have money to even pay for our electricity bills. And I went back to the Chief Minister. I said, sorry, I think we'll have to shut it down. This was a bad decision. He said, no, something will happen. Nothing happened from the government side, but I must tell you, one gentleman read about it in the newspaper, and he came to meet me on the weekend, and he says, wait, we need to figure out what's the footprint of your rooftop, and let's see what I can do. And within 6 months, we had a 60 kilowatt rooftop solar power plant as a CSR. You know, this is how corporate world can support these kind of places. Idea, we don't monetize that place. It's my gift to the city, which is where I shifted in 96, and when it was still a village. And I used to think, okay, what am I going to do here? After it, I think, look for a place where I can make a small museum, but the city supported me. So I am quite happy with the way things are going. We do have certain problems, which are finding youngsters to engage with. Today, there are very few places where youngsters are taught how to manage cultural institutions like museums. So invariably, I try and locate people from hospitality, travel, and try and inculcate this whole thing of museum culture into them, how cultural places need to be run, which is a very big challenge for, I am sure, all of us here, to find the right kind of people to work with. And as Mr. Khokar said, we need more corporate support. So thank you very much, and I'll cut it here, but...
Great. Thanks, Aditya. We'll come back with more questions. But, Oken, do tell us your wonderful story, and you'll have to explain what a Hump museum is.
Hello, everyone. And thank you, India Today. So our museum is probably the newest, brand new. We just opened last December. So, and it's called the Hump World War II Museum. So just to give you a background about this Hump operation. So basically, it's about the Americans flying supplies to China to help China fight the Japanese. In the process, where American lost close to about 700 planes and 1,400 personnel. So in fact, it's known to be even bigger than the Berlin airlift that happened. So this crashes, these planes, this debris was something, I have been very familiar with since I was a small child. In our villages, you would see a wing being used as a part of the, kitchen garden, and someone would bring back a gun, and someone would bring in bullets. And these tiny bits of these small parts were, very, very often seen around the villages. And I was really, really curious right from the childhood, without knowing the background of the whole thing, where these planes were from, where these Indian planes or American planes. But you would see some stuffs, which is written made in Massachusetts or in somewhere, so you could, vaguely figure out these are foreign planes. And so early, I think around 2004-05, I would talk to our village elders who's been to these sites, and I decided, I should go and take a look at, these planes. This would be, some would be about, as far as 3-4 days treks up in the mountain. So, we decided, me and a bunch of friends, said, let's go and take a look at one of these planes. And when we got there, it was really, at that age and time, it was just mind-blowing to see a whole plane, a debris of a whole plane in the middle of the jungle. And, we could see a big tire with Goodyear written on it. So it was almost like a big adventure. And so down the years, I think around the same time, like Ashish said, there were two other people were pursuing a parallel madness, may I say. Kai and Harsh here, they went up to one of the crash sites in the eastern side of Arunachal. And then there was one other guy, American guy called Clayton Cools. So he would go to the sites in Burma and collect the information, get details of the crashes, and taking it back to the family members, whom they have no idea for last 50, 60 years, and tell them, here's your uncle or father who lost, whom you had no idea about for last 50, 60 years. Then, and Kai put me in touch with Clayton, and this was much before we met in person. So when we got together, it was such an excitement, exchanging stories. And I started learning, the background of the whole thing. So then when the story got out, from Kai and, Harsh, their expedition to one of the sites, the American government decided that, they have an agency whereby they go and find, the lost Americans around the world. So they decided, they want to come and find these sites in our area. Then I ended up being an official contractor in this bilateral Indo-American expeditions that went on for another 10 years. So then I got deeper into the whole thing. I could understand better. And then, this really young pilots, some of them as young as 20, 22, they were trained for about 5 weeks back in America, and then they were sent out to fly from Assam to Kunming. So when they were flying from Assam to Kunming, they had to cross the Himalayas at about 25,000 feet. That's where the hump, that's what the hump really was. So, young, very poorly trained pilots, and they would overload it, and they would fly sometime deliberately in really bad weather just to avoid the Japanese, coming in from Burma. So in the process, they lost lots of, like I said, close to about 700 planes. Then in the process at about 2016, I had a discussion with the tourism department in Arunachal. I think maybe it's a good idea to set up a museum on this whole thing. And they're very, very supportive. And then they gave us some money, and then I got talking with Kai and, just to how to go about it. But again, the one way of doing a museum is just put a lot of panels with information, but, to be a good quality museum, stuff from, credible artifacts and things like that. So I would have my team go out way up to 14,000 feet and bring back a machine gun, weighing 50, 60 kilos. So lots and lots of hard work, done 4 or 5 years. So I think it's looking good, and I would like all of you to come and see in a place called Pasighat. It's a very, very small museum, but it's starting to get its own life. Yeah. So I'm getting letters and calls from all over the, from USA whose grandfather was a pilot here. Then I had an American client, a few years ago. He said his grandfather and grandmother met in this, in an American-based hospital. And both of them were married, engaged to different persons back home in America. But my friend's grandfather had a motorcycle accident, grandmother nursed him back, and the whole narrative changed. So
it's full of stories, and it's a very beautiful museum in a beautiful part of the country. I'm really sorry that the clock seems to have sped up. Sorry. Yeah, we've run out of time, it seems. But thank you so much, all of you.